aerospace and defense manufacturing,
machines and automation,
additive manufacturing,
smart manufacturing,
global manufacturing economy.
Hello and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your feed each week. I'm David Muller, Senior Editor at SME Media and your host. Today we're joined by Tim Gaus, Smart Manufacturing Business Leader and Principal at Deloitte. Tim is an application expert and considered an all-seeing eye for manufacturing workforce transformation. Thanks for joining us today, Tim. We're glad to have you here.
David, my pleasure. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and I just scraped the surface of some of your background, but you've had quite a bit of background in manufacturing. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about some of your experience?
Yeah, actually, going way back, I started off, programming PLCs and doing industrial controls before it was kind of cool. Ran my own manufacturing plant within the industry for a number of years, kind of maintenance, engineering, and eventually 24/7 operations across a pretty extensive set of both mixed FTEs, union, and temps, so that whole kind of fun situation. And then since joining Deloitte, I've been really focused on all things end-to-end supply chain with a deep dive into manufacturing itself. I run both our manufacturing practice, but also all the investments we're making in the innovation and the future of manufacturing, which to me is extremely exciting and important to everyone who listens to this podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. I mean, with your experience and just your knowledge, I mean, it's really, I think, a crucial time to have a conversation like this. I mean, we'll start broadly with something that gets repeated by us a lot on here, which is the study that Deloitte did with the Manufacturing Institute that shows kind of what we see as sobering numbers. We already, it's already been, well stated that there's difficulty finding talent, but you guys put some numbers to it. But 1.9 million manufacturing jobs could go unfilled over the next 8 or 9 years if these talent challenges are not addressed. And I mean, at the same time, we have this onshoring trend. So I'm not sure if maybe you see that you're growing the need, obviously, for more talent. What's your view of the current skilled labor gap and how much larger could it grow in the next decade if nothing's done?
Well, if nothing is done, it's absolutely going to grow. There's just no doubt about that. And particularly, as you mentioned, a more recent trend in kind of incentive systems to onshore manufacturing and really push for that to occur. However, I would say the balance is, there are different ways to think about the future of our labor force, which I think we'll get into a little bit today, that could help ease some of that tension. That said, in our smart factory in Wichita, which is where we host our clients to talk about the future of manufacturing, I'd say of the close to 10,000 clients we've had come through over the last couple of years, the labor force issue has been a consistent theme across industry, across manufacturing size, across every single archetype. So this is an issue that has been top of mind for several years already, only getting worse. And it's really a time for us to think about this a little bit differently.
And some of the immediate things that come to mind then is on one hand, like, what is the strategy for finding talent? How do you even find people? And then on the other, there's all these different innovations. It sounds like obviously you've been really close to you've had a lot of experience, some of the innovations that maybe can ease this too, but maybe you should just start with just people themselves, like, what can be done to find good help essentially at your manufacturing operation?
Yeah, I think we need to collectively think about attracting talent to manufacturing operations differently than we have in the past. And that can take a lot of different flavors. I'd say one of the things that we're seeing is kind of the customer experience mindset that we all experience in our lives. The more successful folks at attracting talent are bringing that to their workforce. So they see their workforce as being their customers, and they're trying to create an experience that is enjoyable, is something that people really, really would desire to come to. And that is a different mindset shift than I say some of the classic ways we thought about sourcing talent for manufacturing, where it was a little bit more of, you should thank us, we shouldn't have to thank you mindset. And that's definitely has shifted away. But with that, I think there's a few tactics that are pretty interesting. We all are feeling the crunch of, balancing life outside of work with life inside work, the costs of living these days. And the more innovative companies are really looking at this problem holistically, right? They're looking to solve the whole problem of, how do I make sure that you have the flexibility in your schedule to meet the needs of your kids at home or your aging parents and things of that nature? How do I Think about, perhaps access to transportation. How do I work with local governments and other agencies to make sure we have the right set of infrastructure in place to support where we're making goods? So there's just a whole wide range of pretty interesting ways folks are thinking about attracting talent that are just different than how we've done it traditionally.
Yeah, it's beyond at this point, just like, hey, get here, whatever, however way you can, but you have to get here and punch in, and that's all there is to it. You're, like you said, going beyond that to the work-life balance, but then even on, I mentioned it almost like two different things, like finding talent, and then maybe use advanced technologies in what we can do with the factory of the future. But it sounds like maybe they could also go hand in hand in terms of once people are at the factory, maybe these jobs could be more attractive because of some of the newer technology and just kind of the way the factory of the future is going.
100%. If I kind of give you two bookends to this story, I've had clients say to me, I no longer think about retention because I don't expect it. I just want to get people up the learning curve as quickly as possible. So when they leave, I can replace them as quickly as possible and as most effectively as possible, which is one approach. I can honestly say I don't think that's the best approach, but technology does allow you to do what I just said a little bit more effectively. Like there's ways to virtualize trainings. There's ways to get people from kind of just figuring out where the bathrooms are to being quite an effective employee in a much shorter period of time because technology allows them to do that. One of the most highly sought after solutions that Deloitte has been bringing out is what we call expert capture or knowledge management, which really captures the expertise, the unwritten things, the things that maybe weren't put in an SOP, but absolutely are in the brains of your long tenured employees, and make sure before who've been working with you, 20, 30, 40 years leave, that you've actually done that, got documented in a way where it can be accessible for someone who's just walking through the door. That said, I think there's a much different way to think about talent retention that is technology enabled, that is a much more effective way for companies to think about the future of this workforce. So a couple of things. We've seen a distinct trend that a lot of this next generation of workforce are less interested in the classic career progression, but absolutely are interested in learning new skills. And even, to them, a lateral move can still be viewed as a positive thing because it gets them to a chance to experience something different. So if you think about the ability to move people around within the four walls of the plant to different roles, quality inspector, line supervisor, things of that nature, but do it in such a way where they're continually kind of fed new and vibrant information, I think you find their personal experience will be much better. And then technology allows us to do things like be a lot more flexible in the way we think about staffing and running our lines, right? If you have a much more dynamic way to both understand the skills, the training, the needs, the constraints, and all things are coming together, and basically maximize your production for what you have, you then are much more able to say, hey, maybe I only need you here for 2 days a week. Maybe I can let you go early today and you can come back later on because you have to go take care of your kids. So technology enables a lot more life flexibility as well. The last thing, we've been talking about this for a while, but I think it still goes without saying, the generation that's entering our workforce today or is already in our workforce are much more tech native. And so there's just an expectation that when they walk through the door, they're not dealing with pens and papers and bad lighting and things of that nature. They do expect a modern experience in their workday. And we as manufacturers need to strive to deliver that to them.
And you mentioned, the generation coming in, and I had seen something about Gen Z entering the workforce and being less loyal to one company. I mean, so it sounds like maybe that kind of compounds what you're talking about. Like if you don't have the factory set up to be appealing to this new generation, I mean, they're going to be even, I guess, less loyal to you. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just, do you agree that I guess maybe the generation seems to move around a little bit more, and what can be done? Does it go back to what you just said? Maybe just making sure, it's more of a modern workplace and not something, from yesteryear.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that's a table stakes at this stage. You just can't have the dark, dirty, dangerous manufacturing that we used to have, not that long ago. That shouldn't be existing in today's world, and it's going to severely constrain your ability to retain talent. So I think that's kind of a table stakes situation. That said, I think that the current generation, and surprising or not, David, but we're only a few years away from Generation Alpha hitting the workforce, if you can believe it. So we're talking about, millennials and Z, and we're already into Alpha. But there definitely is more of a desire to have mobility within careers and learn new things. But as I mentioned, you can actually provide a lot of that mobility even within the opportunities you have within your own control. And so I just think understanding the actual desires of the employees and making sure you're providing those experiences will ease this idea that people don't want to be, with the same company. Because I don't think it's about the company. I think it's about the experiences that they're able and offered to have. The other thing that we've seen pretty heavily is this generation has a strong desire for purpose in what they do. And so I think we as, kind of leaders need to make sure that we are thinking about our workforce in a holistic way. And I can tell you one of the more effective things that we've done, with some of our clients is make sure as part of the way they show up to work also shows up in their community, right? How do you help drive the next generation of education within the community that sit around our plants and our manufacturing centers? There's just a lot of different ways for us to make sure that we're fulfilling all elements of folks' lives. And that, I would say, will help ease this perception that by nature, the workforce doesn't want to be loyal. I don't think it's an intrinsic lack of loyalty to any given company. I think it's more the companies need to adapt to the differing desires that this workforce brings to them.
Yeah, it's just a different generation, obviously a newer generation with maybe some different kinds of priorities and things like that. I want to jump back to something that you mentioned in terms of the knowledge transfer, because this is another a big issue that we've been hearing a lot about over the years. It's just like with all the big the large amount of retiring that's been happening with baby boomers, and just like kind of the loss of some of their what's been called tribal knowledge and things like that. And you mentioned that Deloitte has been focusing on capturing that knowledge. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that, about how that works and what that is?
Yeah, for sure. And it's a hugely important issue. And baby boomers are retiring. So is Gen X, unfortunately. So we're getting to things that we think are not too far out are actually upon us today. And what we found is there's a couple of different things that are important to make that successful. One, the next or our workforce doesn't have a single, let's call it modality or way that they like to learn and absorb information. So as you capture the expertise of the workforce that's leaving, don't expect that the way that they learned and the way that they were trained is going to apply equally. So you need to capture it in multiple different ways. In our example, we've done everything from interviewing a very senior technician who was specialized in a specific operation and had been doing it for 20, 30 years, I believe. And they wanted to digitize the advice that he would give, because oftentimes he was the only one who could answer a question because he just knew it. And so it wasn't just a one-off interview, get all your information. It was over a series of time that we kind of created this library of insights from this one individual. And for that individual, it became a bit of his legacy that he was leaving behind. He was proud in what he has done. He wanted to make sure it wasn't lost as things came forward. So there's a way where it's helping him kind of create his own personal legacy, but also helping the organization codify all those small lessons into something that could be accessed. And in this case, it became a bit of a chatbot. But what was interesting, it also had the chatbot with the idea of integrating video feeds, integrating the ability to access kind of the formalized information with the unstructured information. So it really brought together a really cohesive and comprehensive way to think about a problem set. That model can be applied to so many different of the jobs we have today to help kind of mitigate this loss of expertise. The other part of it, though, is as we move from the world of quote unquote chatbots into, I'm sure you're hearing a lot about agentic AI, but the idea that our AI has a bit more proactivity to it, agency. This kind of expert capture allows you to be much more effective in bringing those agents to bear. Because in this case, rather than you relying on Joe or Sally to ask the right question because they thought of it, you can actually have, your underlying agents take a look at the patterns that exist within your data structures, reference this unstructured but now codified information from your expertise, and come up with, call it a first pass 5 whys. It's not all the way there yet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the AI has gotten to the spot where it replaces everything, but it gets a lot more suggestion that allows, again, that expertise to be brought to bear, even with folks who perhaps weren't as used to asking, the principles of Lean Six Sigma, for example. So it's kind of an interesting way to kind of bridge the gap of not losing the expertise, but also modernize the way you deliver that expertise to a workforce that just doesn't have as many years doing what we're doing.
Because obviously the data is so crucial for the AI some of the different uses for AI to function the way it would be effective for a factory, and capturing the expertise, as you mentioned, would be a good, not starting point, but a lot of good data for that to feed off. And the agentic AI is really interesting. I've been hearing more about that, and just like you had mentioned, like maybe it's not there where it's running the factory for you, but it can actually make purchasing decisions, and things like that. Like if you're or bring a machine offline without a human telling it to. And so I guess it can make some of these decisions, but if the data is not good, like it could make maybe wrong decisions. Is that kind of a fair way of thinking of it at this point?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we still haven't changed the paradigm of garbage in, garbage out, and that's even more true in the case of AI. If you're not feeding it, the data in the right way, you're not going to get an action or a recommendation that makes any sense. Which is why I would say broadly within manufacturing, we still see very much human in the loop for the decision processes, where the AI may think it saw something, but before an action is taken, particularly at an asset level, there's some human intervention. Now, will that stay forever? I hope not, actually, because I think this is one of the ways we're going to unlock the ability for us to be less dependent on a workforce that, frankly, is not as prominent in the manufacturing space. But in the nearer term, AI is not coming for your job. AI trying to make your job better and more effective.
And this is, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and it kind of ties together a lot of what we've been talking about. Is like you have this skills gap, you have this looming labor force gap, this challenge to fill roles, but then you look at some of these newer technologies, like the way the AI can function, and different, automation that has been around for a long time, but factories are trying to automate more. How can some of these newer technologies and advancing technologies that maybe aren't new, but are spreading more and getting more advanced, help with I guess, are they going to advance enough in the next 7-8 years to deal with this large skills gap?
The technology, I think, will continue to advance and it could be used to address the skills gap. And I think the leaders, the ones who are going to win this space, the ones who embrace that reality and make it a part of their strategies and their investment kind of starting right now. To your point around data, if you're not thinking about the importance of data on a go-forward basis, you're going to be behind. And as we talk about the shift of AI from being purely digital to, you probably hear it kind of physical AI or robotics, but we're going to put a lot more intelligence into the assets and the things around the assets themselves that will be completely reliant on having the infrastructure in place. So I think that technology is going to get us to where we want to be. Now, I will tell you, having worked a lot with generative AI in the manufacturing context, the problem of, call it, hallucinations and AI making things up has to be controlled in a way that the rest of the world probably doesn't care about nearly as much as we do. Like if you get the ag campaign slightly wrong, it's probably okay. But if you get the machine turning off slightly wrong, not okay. That people get hurt. So the standards are just going to be different for us. I think that's going to be a real challenge for the tech side of the equation. But to me, it's less about the tech and it's more about the conviction of our manufacturers to understand how disruptive it can be, the understanding that the workforce of the future will be working with this tech and will have to shift as a result. How you maintain an AI algorithm is quite frankly different than how you maintain a PID loop and a PLC. And both those skills will need to maintain within our manufacturing IT/OT landscape. We have to think about the support structures very differently. And then finally, though I have heard some clients aspire to be completely lights out in some period of time, I think most of us recognize that even in this 10-year horizon, we're still going to likely have quite a few people making things and operating things. And with that, the skills will have to adapt. And so it has to have a forward look to what is it that future of workforce truly looks like and how you're preparing them to be there as the tech kind of comes along for the ride with us.
Excellent. I mean, are you seen across the board? I mean, you work with a lot of clients, and I mean, have you seen any, just in terms of small, medium, large manufacturers? Does it matter on size in terms of who's doing things better in this regard, and maybe just give an example or two of how to get started if you really you're kind of lost with all this.
Yeah. So I have not seen a small, medium, large trend, nor a industry specific trend. I serve across basically every major manufacturing industry. We serve from very small to very, very large. To me, it's not the size of the company or where you sit, but it is about the strategic thought and the importance operations have to a company's overall culture. If you have only viewed manufacturing operations as the cost center where you have to, squeeze out every last dime every year to make your profit goals, you're probably not properly thinking about where things are going. And to me, this is a different era of intelligent investment in the four walls of our plants to make sure we are properly prepared for this future and can adapt to the competitive threats that are coming. Because the ones that are winning, small, medium, or large, are the ones who are taking that approach, doing some of the harder lift today to get things like data in order, plant systems in place, things that are absolutely underlying critical success factors that can always be pushed off if you're not careful. And the ones that are winning are the ones who didn't push it off in the past and are continue to accelerate that. Now, as far as where to get started, I think it's exactly that. You have to map out kind of your personal, manufacturing networks kind of aspiration and goal. Be very clear on what the workforce is of today and where you want to go tomorrow, and have a very thoughtful, methodical, but strategic approach to investment to kind of both prove the underlying kind of capabilities, drive the ROI you need in the short term, but make sure you're investing for the long-term growth as well.
Okay, great. And you had mentioned a second ago Deloitte's investment with Wichita State and a smart factory there. I mean, how are manufacturers interacting with academia? And can you tell us maybe a little bit more about what's happening at Wichita State?
Yeah, David, it's a great question. And actually, pretty interesting how much outreach we've received from manufacturers to us, Deloitte, to understand our program a little bit differently. So if two things there. One, we've partnered closely with WSU because they've been trying to find these kind of business to academic relationships in a very explicit way. And so in our smart factory, we have full-time students who, as part of their program, both work on our facility, driving the innovation, the future manufacturing, get paid for it, but also learn from both academic and real life how to drive like these kind of super innovations. We found that to be really a powerful both recruitment tool and way to drive really truly innovative thought. You'd be surprised, the way students think about problems are just different than folks who've been kind of on the line for a long time. So to date, I think we've had over 30 kind of students come through, and can tell you quite a few of them are now Deloitte employees. But honestly, it starts even earlier than that. And that's actually part of the purpose that we built the Smart Factory in Wichita, is to create a STEM education kit that takes kind of a classic snap circuit way of creating STEM education and upskills it. And so we've created a housing that has a Raspberry Pi inside, and it allows middle school and high schoolers to learn how to program Python and how to do vision analytics, things of that nature. It's become actually the underpinning of several schools' robotics programs that frankly didn't exist before because they're under-resourced and now are thriving. So Deloitte itself, both with our Believers program and with our partnership with WSU, are finding innovative ways to work with academia from very early days all the way through to graduation to create that talent pipeline. And I can tell you our clients have seen us be successful with that and are starting to follow that same model. So I'd say the number of schools that have now much deeper, much more explicit relationships with local companies has grown, and the way they're interacting is definitely maturing. It's a pretty exciting time. I think an important chapter of how we think about the future of the workforce.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like a crucial way to get ahead of things instead of just, hoping that they study the right things in school and then, show up at the factory or at the company. I mean, it's just a better way of, like you said, going deeper into the pipeline and the future of the future employees. And I guess, that if I understand correctly, the smart factory, it's not just manufacturing roles that it trains for either, right? There's other just like more holistic aspects of operations, right?
100%. Yeah. In the smart factory, we are from L0 to L4. We run the very dense technical stack that allows folks from cybersecurity to AI engineers to quite frankly, shop floor employees, the full breadth to understand what the future manufacturing looks and feels like, and how those innovations are not the art of the possible, but at the art of the pragmatic reality. And I think to me, that's one of the super powerful things we were able to do with our own smart factory.
Excellent. Well, Tim, this is a conversation that I really look forward to having. So I thank you for taking the time to join us today and chat with us. Now, if listeners want to learn more about Deloitte or about what you're doing, where should they go?
It's easy enough. Just Google Deloitte and smart manufacturing. We're going to pop up. Last I checked, we were right behind Wikipedia, or maybe ahead of it. So it should be pretty easy to find us.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining us today. It really was a pleasure, so appreciate it. And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and to hear more podcasts, don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast feed. And to stay up to date about what's happening in manufacturing today and hear more podcasts, visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org.